for our next session, I am joined through the medium of technology by Alison Rose. Now, Alison needs very little introduction from me. She is, of course, the head of NatWest Bank, the first woman to lead a UK bank, and a really big one, with a market share of about 16%. So, Alison, first of all, welcome to the NextGen conference, and tell us, what's a typical day like for you running an enormous bank?
Well, thank you. Really nice to be here. There's no such thing as a typical day like most jobs, but usually a mixture of seeing customers. I try and make seeing customers a big part of my day, whether it's virtually through this or face-to-face. Time with colleagues, so I do quite a lot of drop-in events, where Zoom and Teams is amazing. And then investors, stakeholders, board meetings, usually a mixture of politicians and then my team. I spend a lot of time with my team talking about the business and trying to solve problems. So it's that's the great thing. There's no typical day, which is good and bad.
And you're speaking to us today from the NatWest office in the city.
I am, yes.
It's definitely picking up a bit this week, I've noticed.
Yeah, it is. It's getting busier. The traffic's getting worse, and more people coming in as we phase people into a new way of working. So yeah, but I'm in the office, which is great.
Brilliant. Now, if you were a guest on my Money Clinic podcast, I'm sitting here in the FT's recording studio, which is my usual hangout. The question I normally ask our guests is, what is your earliest money memory? Could I put that one to you?
Sure. I guess my earliest money memory was when I was at school and saving up. I used to get pocket money, like most children did, and saving up to buy a book and realizing I didn't have enough money to buy a book, and trying to figure out, how I was going to buy this book that I desperately coveted from the school sort of stall. And then doing chores and different things to figure out how long it would take me to save up and how much my pocket money would stretch and what it would mean. And I remember I must have been maybe 7 or 8. That was probably sort of really thinking about the value of money and what everything cost, I guess, because it was this wonderful book that I wanted.
Can you remember what the book was? How to Run a Bank?
No, definitely not. It was a book on horses. It was a beautiful book on horses, and actually I still have it on my bookshelf at home.
A wise investment. Now, that was when you were younger, but we're here to talk today about Gen Z, who face huge financial challenges, whether it's the threat of rising student loan repayments to the high cost of renting, let alone the high cost of living and saving for a property. I mean, how can banks help them stay on top of their finances and make the best decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I think you hit the nail on the head there. It's there's a lot of pressures and a lot of challenges, and managing your money and having confidence around that, I think is the biggest thing that banks can do to help Gen Z deal with the challenges they're facing. And therefore it's about developing the skills, the access, and giving them the tools to really think about how they manage their money today and how they manage their money, and give them the confidence in that. So I think education at a very early age is really important. We do a lot of programs in schools with very young kids in terms of teaching them about money. Is called Money Sense, and we recently made it into a computer game called Island Saver. So that's I think giving people confidence about just understanding the basics of money. But then I think it's about financial decisions and what you need at different points in your life. If you're a student, you're inevitably, as you say, managing debt, managing costs, managing a budget probably for the first real time, and then making sure that you can manage that balance between what debt means or how that works. So I think it's really skills, education, and confidence, because I think the more economically confident that you are, the more financial resilience, and the more you can not be intimidated by the different challenges, and also managing that short term versus long term, the spending today versus saving for tomorrow, and the different options that are available. So I think it's about honest conversation, skills, tips, and not being frightened to have the conversation, because I think sometimes that's that can be the problem. You get to have the conversation too late. So I think it's building that resilience early.
Well, I'm sure you know about the FT's Flick charity that we've set up, the Financial Literacy and Inclusion Campaign, and a big part of the work that will be doing is hopefully improving the way that personal finance is taught in schools, and in primary schools as well as secondary schools, to really give people a better head start. But for most of the people who are watching our interview today, their biggest financial challenge is definitely going to be property, whether that's getting enough money for a deposit to rent, or more like getting deposit to buy, perhaps with help from the bank of mum and dad, who, depending on who you believe, are technically the country's 8th or 9th largest mortgage lender with all of the money that they're loaning. I mean, what are your views on this and the housing market in general?
Yeah, look, I mean, I think owning your own home is a completely natural aspiration for young people, and you highlight exactly the issue, which is that home ownership seems even further and further away, particularly with property prices, rising all the time. So I think, it's really about giving people the confidence of the buildings, the steps to build towards that aspiration. And also, I think it's really important to develop sustainable home ownership, because that's a really critical point. So, I unfortunately can't make owning a home any cheaper. That's the nature of the market. But I think making sure we can provide access to different products to get onto the housing ladder, I think. So low deposit, help to buy schemes, all of those different options, and deciphering what those options are, I think, is one step. But the other step, I think, is really bridging that gap between renting and ownership, because you start off by renting. And one of the things that, when you're renting, is actually people who rent and pay their rent on time are building up great credit scores and great sort of knowledge and background and experience. So, one of the things that we're introducing is something called a new app called Housemate, which allows you to manage your financing, split bills, share when you're in a home together. But it also helps build towards contributing to your credit score. And your credit score is really important in terms of your ability to access financing in the future. And I think, whilst there is all the solutions of building more houses, building more sustainable houses, I think building that path from renting to buying, thinking about what a deposit would mean, building a credit score, how you can get to that point, are the things that, I can help and my colleagues can help with.
Well, that's good to hear. And just in case people are interested, is Housemate something that NatWest customers can access now, or is it coming down the line in the future?
Well, it's actually just launched, and it sort of helps you share split bills regardless of who you're banking with. So you don't need to bank with us, although obviously I would encourage that. But anyone over 17 with a bank account, you can get access to the app. And I think that's a really helpful new app that hopefully should help renters and build that insight and credibility. So yes, hot off the press, just launched. So we're really excited about that and hope it's going to really provide that support as we've been testing it with customers.
Now, NatWest, you lend money to millions of people and businesses, large and small. So, Alison, you have a superb insight into what's going on at the heart of the UK economy. Now, as we recover from the effects of both the pandemic and Brexit, there's huge inflationary pressures, problems in the supply chain. How do you expect things to pan out?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I had a crystal ball. A couple of things I would say is, if you think about what we've been through in the pandemic, the one thing I would say is business and small businesses and entrepreneurs in the UK have been incredibly resilient. The amount of businesses who've had to change and adapt and adopt to, this extraordinary situation where we've put the economy into effectively a hard shutdown because of the pandemic. And what we've seen is businesses have managed to perform very well. There are lots of support, great collaboration between the public and the private sector coming together. So very low impairments, very few bankruptcies, businesses trading. But actually the economic recovery has been much, much better than everyone forecast when we were sitting here 12, 18 months ago. And so what you're seeing is real challenges as people ramp back up their supply chain, supply chain shortages. You've got a number of different things going on at the same time. So I think as a business owner, it's a pretty tough time at the moment, because you're taking your business out of the pandemic into a market with lots of opportunity and having to deal with global supply chains that are rewiring, and a lot of more debt that's been put into the system as a result of the support. So I think some good news: unemployment's much lower than we expected. Economic recovery has been much stronger. Businesses have been super resilient and entrepreneurial, but some real short-term challenges at the moment as the economy recovers, with some things going on. So that's definitely affecting business confidence, particularly small business confidence at the moment.
Well, let's stay with the theme of small businesses and entrepreneurs, because they are the people who are really going to be watching this today. Now, the world of work is changing. I've noticed many of our younger guests on the Money Clinic podcast, they have the aspiration to run their own business one day, whether that's scaling up a side hustle that they've already got, or coming up with a freelance career where they can do a variety of things. Now, what could banking look like for this generation of budding entrepreneurs?
Yeah, I mean, look, I think banking has to continually evolve to support that. And you're absolutely right. We're seeing, so many of our customers and so many young people starting up businesses on the side, and much, much earlier, this sort of side hustle, the entrepreneurs. And I think that's the thing. People don't fit neatly into a pattern of, I'm a student today, I'm a business owner, or in a career tomorrow. It's all happening at the same time. So, banks like mine have to be really agile to support the needs of customers and thinking about it. So, look, I think, understanding what young people are really thinking about, what they're worried about, what sort of business they want to set up. We have a digital startup bank called Metal, which is geared entirely to the sort of gig economy, the small entrepreneur who wants to start up, all completely online, helping them manage their business. And I think it's things like that which more suit the type of businesses that entrepreneurs want to start. And then I think just generally for entrepreneurs, I think being an entrepreneur is a really, it's one of the toughest jobs you can have. You've got a great idea, you're starting a business, and knowing where to go for help and advice and support is so critical. So we have free accelerators up and down the country for people to access to get the help and support they need, but also making sure that they're getting access to the right type of funding at the right point. That's a really, really important part of being an entrepreneur. So the main thing is listening to people around what they want, designing our products and services. But your point around, we need to, your campaign around teaching money skills and financial skills in schools. I'm a great believer we should teach entrepreneurship in schools as well. I think it's a really valid and exciting career and opportunity. And having those right tools and help that you can get at the right point is the big part of doing it. So it's one of the things I'm really focused on from an entrepreneurship
Well,
perspective.
I'm really glad to hear that, because I think that there are lots of entrepreneurs, who have a brilliant idea, or they have the personality where they could convince others to invest in a company, win at a Dragon's Den type scenario. But then when it comes to the nitty gritty of the numbers, understanding how tax works, structuring a company, there's an awful lot of things that you have to deal with, payrolls, which are just beyond the ken of many, many young entrepreneurs.
Yeah, I mean, it's really tough, and it's the practicalities of how you run the business. So our accelerators, of which there are 14 up and down the country, which are completely free, run these entrepreneur training programs, and they really and we partner with lots of different people in the local ecosystem and bring people together, and it's all designed around, here is Metal as a business account that you can open up, as I mentioned, but Free Agent, which will help you manage your invoices and your tax, as well as access to Mentor, which is a free advice service for HR and payroll and hiring, And then the people in the Entrepreneur Accelerator will teach you how to write a business plan, what you would need to do to become investable, to access the right sort of funding at the right time, rather than putting it all on a credit card and then realizing you don't have the cash flow. So it's those practical steps that we're really dedicated to putting in place, because I think for an entrepreneur, coming up with the idea is, is the really tough thing. It's the practical steps of then how you build the business behind you. That's where banks like mine and others can really step in and help and give you practical steps, tools, access to, if you look on our business hub, it'll give you detail around what you need to do around branding. How do you do marketing? How do you access the digital market? And it's those steps that determine whether an entrepreneur's business is going to survive that first 2-year period, which is the really difficult one. And then also that step of how you scale as you go forward. And so the accelerator programs and support mechanisms are there to help do that.
Well, I think all of that sounds wonderful. But if I were an investor in NatWest, then I might say, well, why are you spending all of this money on investing in the entrepreneurs of the future? Why is it important to NatWest as a business to do this?
Well, because the entrepreneurs of today are going to be the business owners of tomorrow. And entrepreneurship, the UK is a remarkable country for entrepreneurs. On average, there are 1,100 new businesses that start every single day. And those entrepreneurs and those businesses are creating real contribution to the economy, creating real jobs, new jobs, and they are going to grow and contribute to economic recovery and growth. And you can't have a thriving economy without a thriving entrepreneur and SME economy that supports that. So for me, if, as a large organization with lots of colleagues and partnerships, if we can use our skills to help support that, then hopefully those entrepreneurs will want to bank with me when they're at the point that they need financing. We can help them and they'll be our future customers. So it's a long-term investment in the future, but it's the right investment because, at this point, there are too many barriers for entrepreneurs setting up businesses, and we can do something about that. And so if my investors ever ask me about it, it's because, over the long term, those entrepreneurs will survive much, much longer with the right support, which means they're contributing to a thriving economy.
Brilliant. Great answer. Now, let's briefly talk about green issues. Obviously, COP26 is about to kick off. And I know from doing personal finance at the FT that ESG, greener investment themes, are of massive interest, well, to all of our readers, but to the younger ones especially. Now, whether that's choosing greener funds or making better choices as consumers, what's NatWest doing to be greener?
So quite a lot of things. I think the climate challenge is one of the most important challenges we're going to face as a generation. And so a really important part of the strategy of NatWest that I launched back in 2019, 2020. So what we've done very specifically, we think we have a role to play. So first of all, we're getting our own house in order. So our organisation, NatWest, is net zero already, and we've committed to be net positive by 2030. We're committed to ending harmful activity, so we're phasing out lending to coal, and we're also only working with oil and gas companies who have a credible transition plan aligned with Paris, with that credible transition plan in place by the end of this year. Oil and gas is only 0.7% of our balance sheet lending, so it's not a huge part, but it's a really important part that we work helping people transition. And then most importantly, I think, is funding and supporting our customers in terms of making the transition. So I've made a commitment to halve the emissions from our financing on our balance sheet by 2030. We made a commitment to really support renewable financing. We're already the leading provider of renewable financing over the last decade. I set a target of 20 billion in 3 years. We did that in 18 months. And I've recently announced another 100 billion. And that's about financing the transition. We're trying to shift the whole economy in order to do that. But then it's about practical steps. So we really want to help people understand and have the tools to help them make the transition to a low carbon economy. Sometimes I think the issue is so big that thinking about what can I do in my personal choices to make this change is really difficult. So we partner with companies like Octopus Energy to help on electric cars. We are partnering with Microsoft to develop tools to put in the hands of SMEs to help them finance the transition. And we know that SMEs, who represent 50% of the revenue of the UK economy and 60% of the employees, have a really important role to play in the transition to a low carbon economy. And we think by them embracing that, it's about 160 billion revenue opportunity for businesses. So how do we help them do that? And then for consumers, green mortgages that we've launched. We're also partnering with a company, a fintech called Kogo, which will go into our mobile app, which will help consumers track their carbon footprint and so enable them to make changes. So we're trying to move from, putting the financing in place to make the transition, but practical steps to help customers do that as well, so they have the information and can make choices.
Well, some really impressive digital initiatives, which brings me on to my penultimate question, cash. Now, cash, banknotes, coins, fairly meaningless for Gen Z and, many of us older people who are tapping to pay. Now the contactless limit has gone up to £100. But even so, it's pretty impossible for under 11s to get a contactless card unless they pay for a service like GoHenry. I mean, why aren't banks as interested as they might be in younger customers?
Well, I think we're super interested in younger customers, and we've just recently launched a youth strategy. And I think you're exactly right. The age for people having access to digital capabilities and non-cash access starts much younger. That age group of 7 to 11 is really critical, both from the educational perspective you were talking about at the beginning, but also their own independence around cash. So we're developing a whole youth strategy that really works from very young kids, like our Money Sense program and different elements like that, right the way through from 7-11 until they become students, and then when they have their own independence and support. We recently made an acquisition of a fintech called Rooster Money, exactly designed to really build into our proposition proper support for young people and young kids having access to the right tools. And you're right, it's almost entirely digital. It's really about making it fun and giving interest. So we're very focused on that age group, which is much younger, that we need to really step in and support.
And then my final question to you, Alison, as someone who's enjoyed a lifelong career in banking and importantly got to the top, what advice would you give to those watching, particularly women, that a career in banking could actually be for them?
Oh, well, look, I'm really lucky and very privileged as well. I'm doing a job I really enjoy, and running an organization like mine, it's a great privilege to do that. And when I started out in banking, I didn't really know what I wanted to do or really have that detailed understanding of what banking involved. And the key things I would say is you can have 100 different careers in a bank. You can do marketing, you can do technology, you can be a data scientist, you can work in all aspects of banking, and it offers huge opportunity to develop and invest in yourself. I joined on a graduate program. We have a really extensive apprenticeship, intern and graduate program, and it trains you and gives you the tools and lets you try lots of different things. When I started, I thought I wanted to be a trader. I tried that and realized that would be an absolute disaster. So that's not what I did. But you can have lots of different careers. So I would say, I would encourage everyone who's interested to do it. I would certainly say, the thing about banking is it's a team sport. You work with really interesting, lots of different people from lots of different backgrounds. I'm really committed to having a really inclusive environment. And so, banking, I think, still has that slightly macho male image. It's really, I'm not macho or male, as you can tell. And so I would encourage people to give it a go. It's a way of building your skills, investing in yourself, and you can have a really, really exciting career. And, we want as many people from as many different backgrounds and diversity to come into an organization, because the last thing you want is groupthink. And that's really what it's about, getting great people, working as a team, delivering great value over the long term for all of our customers that has proper meaning. So I think it's a great place to start your career.
Well, Alison Rose, thank you so much for coming along to this virtual chat with me as part of the FT's Next Gen conference. It's been a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you.
Thank you.